Good morning, everybody. This is a live extreme weather briefing. Check out the new ticker that I've added along the bottom that discusses the slight risk that the Storm Prediction Center has added across large sections of central Texas, central southeastern Oklahoma, into central Arkansas. That's mainly for a nocturnal event that is going to be Wednesday night. The models have definitely trended toward a slower trough ejection. There you can see that bowling ball dropping down, touching the northern boundary of Mexico, and then diving into the southern plains before shearing out upon its ejection across Dixie Alley. But once it does that shearing out process and that launch toward the southern Great Plains, it also expands out a low-level jet, and the low-level jet is going to cover multiple states. Here is that low-level jet evolution. That slower trough ejection, though, doesn't really pull that moisture northward into the southern plains until late night on Wednesday. Then that surface low ejects. A front's going to crash off to the southeast. And right near that triple point, likely at southwestern Oklahoma, right at about 11 p.m., maybe 10 to 11 p.m. as early as, looks like convective initiation is going to happen across western Oklahoma into northwestern Texas. Then that front's going to crash off to the south and change the precipitation over to ice right on the northwestern side of that convection, right on the northwestern side of those supercells that are able to eject. But here on Thursday, note as we're moving forward, this is Wednesday afternoon, low-level jet ramps up Wednesday night as the trough ejects, then expands across the south-central U.S., the mid-south. So right now, my decision from a storm-chasing perspective is, do I try to do the full send and chase Wednesday night and Thursday? You have to stay up the whole entire night. Potential negatives with that: you might run out of gas, might have vehicle problems wasted in western Oklahoma. And then imagine being in western Oklahoma right at midnight when it looks like there's a big-time tornado outbreak for the central and lower Mississippi River Valley on Thursday, the next day. Then you just have to chase that convective line all the way east. You'd have no sleep ahead of Thursday, where daytime initiation of storms is expected. And in fact, we could even see 30 tornadoes from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Thursday as that trough ejects. I've got the day 3 slight risk below me. That's from the Storm Prediction Center. That's mainly for the late night. So see the late arrival of the moisture Wednesday evening. 60s barely touch the Red River. They do poke into southeastern Oklahoma. I think that 60, maybe 58 plus dew point line is going to be in general, the marker for that separates the potential for surface-based convection from more elevated convection. But there is that cold bowling ball of air aloft that ejects at about midnight Wednesday night, arriving into western Oklahoma just as that front is slamming south. Could be a couple of supercell storms there in southwestern Oklahoma with icing just to the northwest of those as that front surges off to the south. But then some of those prefrontal confluence lines are going to initiate. Forecast soundings do look supportive of an isolated tornado threat near the DFW area across North Texas. That would be Wednesday late night into the early morning hours on Thursday. I'm likely going to position somewhere in eastern Arkansas, waiting there on sunrise on Thursday to chase that whole entire outbreak on Thursday. Multiple rounds of tornado potential on Thursday. A more widespread outbreak appears likely. If this trough were ejecting during even March or especially April, this would certainly be a multiple day tornado outbreak, likely across the southern plains first. And this is probably a sign of things to come in the long run. This is the surface-based instability, really showing you that where the greatest potential for surface-based convection is. This is the late night Wednesday. Notice how that blob maximizes right around midnight western Oklahoma, just to the west of Oklahoma City. Convection should fire ahead of that crashing front as it moves through Oklahoma City. Supercells will be possible ahead of that front, probably getting undercut by that surging Arctic boundary. May have icing right in the northwestern portion of those storms. I was talking to Mike Morgan, KFOR meteorologist in Oklahoma City, about that, and he said a very rare potential could emerge with supercell storms with icing right on the rear flanks of those supercell storms, but they still will have access to that relatively warm inflow. But then the Cape shifts off to the east, intensifies on Thursday right along that Mississippi River Valley, just in time for peak heating. So one thing that's a little bit worrisome is that the slower timing that's being depicted by these recent models, that's actually increasing the threat of a tornado outbreak on Thursday because of the arrival of those favorable kinematics, the favorable deep layer wind shear, favorable bulk shear, low level shear arrives near that lower Mississippi River Valley just in time for peak heating on Thursday. Of course, there still is a decent chance that those forecast models could change. Here's the precipitation type and that surface low showing the rapid cyclogenesis over the really northeastern New Mexico. Then it drops down into the Texas Panhandle, does a quick little pivot, and then ejects off to the northeast, lifting through southern Missouri, northern Arkansas, and through the Ozark Mountain region. Ahead of that surface low and ahead of the front, there's going to be prefrontal confluence lines that will also develop convection on Thursday. So now let's take a look at some forecast soundings. And we'll dig a little bit deeper. This is just the NAM model that we're looking at right now. Still excited for those convective allowing models to get within range so that we could see the exact location of where the forecast models are showing convective initiation. But the models are definitely trending slower, trending toward initiation in western Oklahoma late night. And now I am going to show you where that is happening. We're going to be focused on the NAM first. The 3-kilometer NAM goes out about 60 hours. So by late night tonight, and especially tomorrow morning, during the day tomorrow, we're going to get an idea of where those convective allowing models are going to be showing that. Stand by here. About to pop my head back in, and there we go. So let's first look at Wednesday, the threat for late night convective initiation. I want to show you that bowling ball trough ejection first off, and it comes in a little bit later. This is a 12Z. The upper level low is still way off to the west, across near the Mexico border of Arizona and Mexico, well off to the southwest. By this time, dew points are just starting to arrive into South Texas. There you can see the 60s dew points down near Corpus Christi, mid-60s on the morning on Wednesday. You're going to wake up to about 50 dew points in Oklahoma, but it's still going to feel a lot more moist Wednesday morning, certainly than it's been. And by late morning, by about midday, the 60 line starting to move up through central Texas, through the Austin area, starting to knock on the back door of Waco, and then Dallas starts to get into the upper 50s. But the trough is still way to the west. It doesn't eject until the overnight hours on Wednesday. But that does give time for this rapid moisture advection off the Gulf of Mexico. You finally start to see those 70-plus dew points down there. That's the purple in the 70-plus. That's setting the stage for Thursday, a pretty substantial severe weather outbreak. There's not going to be any issues with late arrival of moisture across the Mid-South, Central, and Lower Mississippi River Valley. You might think that this is the dry line, but it's really just the color scheme of the dew points. The actual dry line is out here across the Texas Panhandle, just to the west of Shamrock, by 0Z. Even though the dew points are only into the 40s, they drop into the teens back behind it. So it is a more diffuse dry line, and that's because of the timing of the system and the late arrival of that moisture. If the system arrived about a day later, a little bit slower of an ejection, then you'd probably give that dry line some time to tighten up across the southern high plains. But it is middle February. You don't really get those extremely tight dry lines with the deep moisture off to the east of them. This is a tight dry line because you're still dropping your dew points by double digits, up to 20 degrees there from east to west across that dry line. Definitely the kind that could even fog up your windshield if you're driving back and forth across it. Dew points get into the mid-50s across western Oklahoma, at least according to the NAM. As we go and progress through the new model runs, we'll definitely have to see just how high those dew points are able to advect back to the dry line across the southeastern Texas Panhandle, western Oklahoma. And this is midnight, too, so that dry line's still way back in the eastern Texas Panhandle at midnight, and this crashing front starting to blast south as well. Look at the temperatures that decrease dramatically back behind it. Freezing line dropping into the northern Texas Panhandle. Temperature dew points in the mid-50s, temperatures into the upper 50s as well. But there is a lot of cold air aloft at the upper levels. Here's the 500 millibar temperatures, showing you that bowling ball ejecting from New Mexico, starting to move over the Texas Panhandle. And as this cold air is starting to move over top those mid-50s dew points, it's going to start to create instability out there. Surface-based instability even, with February, even though it is February. There's the crashing front, there's the dry line, Likely to first see initiation of storms over southwestern Oklahoma along that crashing front. And really that instability peaks right at about midnight. Convective allowing models, the majority of those models are showing initiation of storms likely elevated to maybe the potential of a surface-based storm, though, across southwestern Oklahoma and into northwestern Texas, just ahead of that surging front. Icing, though, on the northwestern side of this precipitation shield, and maybe even that Arctic front backs right up against the rear flanks of these storms. So you get that ice on the backside, still access to warm inflow. And then as you go through the early morning hours, that convective line pushes off to the east, likely to have some thunder and lightning across central Oklahoma. The 60s dew points down near the Red River. And it is possible that there could be some surface-based storms that try to initiate across North Texas. I'm not sure that that potential is incredibly high right now, but it could happen down there. Anywhere with those 60s dew points, northeastern Texas into the early morning hours. The timing just not as favorable across North Texas, but there still are some soundings that are supportive of even a low-end tornado threat. You can see the surface-based instability here certainly being depicted by this forecast sounding. You can see the hodograph still a little bit curved, little loop-de-loop there, about 3 kilometers. Plenty of bulk shear to favor those supercells. But it looks a little bit weird, the wind fields across North Texas late night. This is actually Thursday morning, and it just doesn't appear timed properly for this late night big severe weather event, but you do get the launching east of that surface-based instability. And then on Thursday, you start to get the building of CAPE here across eastern Louisiana into eastern Arkansas and across Mississippi. This is by midday. And you also have a massive low-level jet right over top that surface-based instability. Look at this. Almost like you're pushing a dry line Pacific front off to the east a little bit because of that quick, rapid ejection. This is a big-time low-level jet, 70-plus knots. It's also at about noon, pretty close to peak heating as well, a little bit before peak heating. But that's that low-level jet. Nasty forecast soundings out ahead of a convective line. Dew points will not be a problem on Thursday. Mid-60s dew points up and down that Mississippi River Valley. Looking at your 0 to 1 kilometer EHI. Anywhere in blue there is a nasty warm sector that is going to have the potential for tornadoes. Let me slide that just a little bit to the right here. Looks like my ticker might have just left. There we go. There's the ticker. Fixed it. Learning how to add graphics to these weather briefings, everybody. This old man is figuring out technology. So this is at 18Z. EHIs in blue there, definitely showing quite a favorable environment for tornadoes. I'd want to be waiting down here, Pine Bluff, southeastern Arkansas, maybe just to the east of Little Rock at sunrise, and just wait for the initiation of those storms up and down the Mississippi River Valley. You could click at some forecast soundings here, and bam, that's a nasty hodograph. Plenty of surface-based instability, near 70-degree surface temperatures over mid-60s dew points. Plenty of directional shear as well. The loop gets a little bit smaller. The main loop here, though, of the hodograph gets much larger. This is looking like a classic Dixie Alley outbreak type of a hodograph just to the left. Your surface wind due south at about 20 knots. Your 1 kilometer wind just above the ground, south-southwest, above 60 knots. That's big-time wind shear. A little bit of a shallow critical angle, as is often the case, but more than compensated for the big-time contribution of that streamwise vorticity getting ingested by the storm. Plenty of surface-based instability. Nice dry pocket of air coming in the mid-levels as well. These are the type of soundings. We'll usually give you a PDS type of a tornado flag, 73 over 67. A lot of instability there. A lot of directional shear. 70-knot low-level jet. Fast storm motion, about 50 knots. As is often the case, these things are going to be hauling ass. A very dangerous event here that is being indicated on Thursday, centered across the Mississippi River Valley. And then that threat dominates the entire state of Mississippi all the way up to Memphis, the nose of that instability up to the Missouri boot heel. Some pretty nasty soundings will be possible up there. It does look like that northern edge of the instability axis is going to push up through into southern Illinois. But really, any sounding you pick into Mississippi at 21Z, peak heating, that is a major, major hodograph right there. Supportive of a strong, violent tornado potential, moving quickly at 50 knots. Plenty of instability, especially for this time of year. Plenty of surface-based instability, 70 over 66. Absolutely nasty hodograph there. Your 0 to 1 kilometer shear in excess of 400. Storm relative helicity, 400 meters squared per second squared. Your upper levels, because of that quickly shearing out upper system, west-southwesterly aloft, southwesterly low-level jet, south-southwesterly near due south surface wind. So that to me looks like tornado outbreak. By this time, that surface low is lifting up into northern Illinois, but pulls all that moisture all the way up tight to the surface low. This is going to be the classic case. Do we target the surface low or further down south? Looks like probably northern Mississippi to western Tennessee would be a very favorable target. That's at 21Z. So I'm going to shift a little bit east. 993 surface low. Wow. And that's at 21Z. Likely going to have a nasty squall line extending south of that. And you could already see even the regular NAM here is suggesting these prefrontal confluence lines, prefrontal convergence supercells that will develop out ahead of that main front. Here is your front, Arctic front surging south. Snow on the northwest side of that. Looks like this is going to be a good one for Chicago if you believe the NAM. Not intensifying surface low here in central Indiana. Textbook path. Central Illinois, northern Illinois, up into southwestern Michigan where I grew up. Grand Rapids. G. Raggedy could get some decent snow from this on the north side. Icing. And then the tornado threat continues to push into Alabama. Central Tennessee. There's your 0 to 3 kilometer EHI showing you the co-location of that 0 to 3 kilometer storm relative helicity with the surface-based shear. Showing it moving into western Alabama. Tuscaloosa, Birmingham by 0Z. And then it should push a little bit further east. I don't see this system sliding over the Appalachians, at least. Probably not timed for a Piedmont severe weather event. But right now, I would put out a moderate risk for something like that if this were verifying the morning of and there weren't the uncertainty of the models leading up. This is at 15Z. Could easily have tornado potential ongoing across south central Arkansas by this time. This is 15Z Wednesday. And we are focused on the NAM model, but I've noticed some consistencies in the NAM leading up, starting with yesterday, 12Z, 18Z, 0Z, 6Z, 12Z, the trends all the way up, continuing to slow down the NAM, and definitely starting to increase the potential for a tornado outbreak across the Mid-South. There's the 0 to 3 kilometer EHI showing you that instability axis dominating eastern Arkansas, eastern Louisiana, pushing into western Mississippi as well. PDS tornado soundings all over the place. You pick a sounding here across northern Mississippi, that's just a nasty, nasty hodograph. That suggests fast-moving tornadoes, violent tornado potential. That's a large hodograph right there. And the timing of this trough ejection, coincident with peak heating on Thursday across the Mid-South, is going to be a big problem. Looks like in eastern Arkansas, eastern Louisiana, entire state of Mississippi, western Tennessee, western Kentucky, even the Missouri Boot Heel, far southern Illinois, potentially far southern Indiana, and then pushing into central Tennessee, as well as Alabama as we get closer to the evening on Thursday. We still need to nail down the timing, certainly for this event, and we will nail that down with time. But I do expect a severe weather and likely a tornado outbreak from this event. There's your bowling ball trough. And I think this is going to be a sign of things to come during the spring, during storm season 2022. You're going to see, because of that cold PDO that we've been talking about, you are just going to see these troughs deepening once they hit the west coast, dropping south. You're going to see the encouragement of that western U.S. trough, eastern U.S. ridge, the negative P&A. You've got the warm NPO across the north central Pacific, helping to encourage the ridge across the north central Pacific, and that helps to encourage the development of a trough across the western U.S. And you're seeing a trough right here. Look at that bowling ball drop south out of the Pacific Northwest, so that ridge further west across the north central Pacific, bottoms out across the southern plains, if this were to happen during March and April, you'd see big severe weather across the southern plains as well. Also, you'd see an outbreak of tornadoes on Thursday as that system shears out and then lifts up toward the southern Great Lakes. I am planning an exclusive live briefing for Facebook supporters. I posted about it last night. That's coming at 7 p.m. Eastern tonight. And that is official. That's going to be for Facebook supporters. We're going to break down the new models as they're coming out. We'll break down the 18Z run, see how the NAM is trending between 12Z, 18Z. And then we'll also break down those 0Z models toward the tail end of that live Q&A. That's going to be tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern time, exclusively for Facebook supporters. We're going to do a live Q&A on photographs, on forecasting severe weather. We'll look again at the Pacific climate system out there as well, which should encourage the development of that western U.S. trough. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in to my weather reports. Say hello to Gizmo. She is doing good. And I think I like that ticker on the bottom. I will continue to work with this ticker. Never stop chasing.